In .NET 9, Microsoft removed the Swagger UI from their API projects. Instead, we just have an OpenAPI JSON file without a user interface. While this can be frustrating because we don't get a UI out of the box, I think that it's a great thing. The reason why I think that is because we have 4 easy options for creating documentation for our APIs. Basically, we have choices. In this video, I'm going to show you all 4 solutions so you can decide which solution is right for you. If you want the source code from this video, click the link in the description. Now, if you find this type of content useful, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave a comment. I try to respond to as many of the comments as possible. Also, if there's a topic that you want to see covered, go to suggestions.imtimcorey.com and either upvote an existing suggestion or leave your own. Finally, if you want comprehensive real-world training courses to modernize your skills, go to imtimcorey.com and check out the DevPass. All right, let's jump into Visual Studio. We're going to create a new project. We're going to create an API project, .NET Core, ASP.NET Core Web API. And let's call this our Open API demo. Actually, let's call this our Open API demo app. And let's call this first one Standard API. We're going to do a basic standard .NET 9. We'll do minimal API, something really simple. So no authentication, yes to HTTPS, no to containers, yes to enable Open API support. That's important. And then don't check the rest of the boxes. Okay, so this is what you get out of the box. All right, so what we're going to do is just as it is, we're going to run this and see what happens. All right, and when you do, first of all, it might not even launch. And the reason why is because if you go here to Properties, Launch Settings, Launch Browser down here is set to false. You can set that to true. Some people change both, but we're not doing the HTTP project. If you are, then set that to true instead, or both if you want to. When you save this, go ahead and do a clean solution. That cleans out the file so it makes sure it puts new in. And now when you launch, you get this, which is a 404 page count you found. That's because you actually need to go to /openapi/v1.json. When you do, you get this. OpenAPI version 3.0.1 is the one I'm using right now. There's our title, there's our version, there's our servers, there's the path, the weather forecast URL with get and all the rest. This is what OpenAPI exports. It's a JSON file that tells us all about our API, which is great, except for the fact that I don't really want to see it this way. I want to see that nice, Swagger UI type thing. Don't worry, we're going to get there. Before we do though, I do want to make a couple of changes. I'm going to change it here in this standard API, and then we're going to use the same setup for all the other APIs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get rid of everything but the run. And that includes this thing down here. So everything between use HTTPS redirection and run goes away. Down here, we're going to say public record, person record. And this is just to give us something to play with. I wanted more of an API than just one weird endpoint for weather we've all seen. I wanted something that had, get and post and delete. So we're going to say string first name, string last name, and string email. If you're not familiar with records, that's the complete declaration. That's everything. Unlike a class where you have to then, put properties and all the rest, these are the properties. So super easy to declare, which also means it's super easy to then use. So we're going to say list of person record, and we're going to say people equals, we're going to use a new syntax for creating arrays, which is just square brackets. And then in here, we'll say new Tim Corey, and we'll put our help email address, help@devforge.com. If you didn't notice, we are changing over to the name DevForge. Same thing. It's the same, everything we're doing. It's just that I started this YouTube channel just to help people out, and it's a little weird saying, go to iamtimcorey.com, but you just go to devforge.com. So we're also going to add new things to DevForge as we slowly transition to it. Sue, Storm, if you've been around for a while, you've probably seen this used quite a bit. Sue at stormy.org. And new, let's throw Bilbo in there. I'm only going to do this once. I'm going to copy and paste from now on. Halflings at the Shire.org or .com. Okay, so I'm only going to do this once. I wanted to just have something to copy and paste, but I also wanted to set up this API really quick. So app.map.get. So we're going to say /person. And for here, we'll just say return people, because that's going to get all the people. App.map.get. And for this one, we'll say /person /ID, which will actually be the index of this. Don't tell anybody. Normally it would be the actual identifier, but that's okay. We can kind of cheat a little bit. People ID, something like that. And then app.map.post person. And we're going to pass in a person record, call it P. And we're going to say people.add P. Again, as you can see, this is just a demo. It's not actually good code. It's just to have a bit of a working API. App.map delete. And we're going to say /person. And we'll pass in int ID. And we're going to say people.remove at ID. That's one of the reasons why we're using the ID, because we can do remove at, which is identifier for what spot in the array. It's not a unique identifier for the person like it would be if we have like an ID field. So with that, we've got now an API that has 4 different endpoints. So if we run this, it's going to build a bit of a different API or open API specification. So now you can see that just kind of scrolling through here, we have our delete, we have our person by ID. If we scroll up here, we have our post, and we have our get, which gets all. So there we go. That's our API, our standard API. So now what we're going to do, let's we'll leave that open, but we'll shrink down the rest in just a minute. We're going to say add new project, and web API project. We're going to call this Swagger UI. You might say, well, Tim, Swagger is gone. No, it's not. It's still here. So let's leave all the settings alone. We'll hit create. And then what we're going to do is close that out. We're going to copy, including the app.run, everything below app.use HTTPS redirection. We're going to copy that. And then in Swagger UI's program.cs, we're going to overwrite everything from line 17 down. So just paste that in. It's the same code. We're just setting things up for the Swagger UI. So now let's right click on the dependencies of Swagger UI. We're going to say manage NuGet packages. We're going to browse and search for Swagger UI. When you do, you're going to get swashbuckle.asp.NET Core.Swagger UI. Currently, the build is at 7.2.0. Hit install and apply and all the rest. And then we come back over here to our program.cs. Make sure you're in the right program.cs, a Swagger UI program.cs. And we need to make a modification here. And this is where the big change is, right? So we're going to say app.use Swagger UI. And we're going to say options. Curly braces. Inside here, we're going to say options.use Swagger, spell it right, Swagger endpoint. And the endpoint is /open API /v1.json. Sound familiar? That's because that's where that is. That's that JSON file we saw. That's the raw JSON file. We're going to convert it into a UI now. And we can call it whatever version you want. Some people say V1. We're going to call it version 1. Okay, put a semicolon at the end of that line, semicolon at the end of that line, line 16. And we're practically done. The one thing I'll do for quality of life is I'm going to go to launch settings. I'm going to say launch browser to true. And then I'm not quite done here. I'm also going to say launch URL. And for this, I'll say Swagger. And what it does is it launches your API at /Swagger. So it's just a bit of a shortcut. Now change your drop down here to Swagger UI. That just sets the startup project to Swagger UI. Hit the HTTPS button. And when you do, you get the Swagger UI back, the one you're probably familiar with, that you can try things out, you can execute, and there's our 3 results, and so on. So that's Swagger UI. That's the first one. It's the one that you probably know. Notice it says version 1 in the upper right-hand corner. You can have multiple versions. You can customize this. You can make it look different. You can skin it. You can do a lot of things with this. I am just touching the surface of what this does. But if you've used Swagger before, you probably know some of it. There's a lot more you can get into, but just note that this is just the beginning. Okay, so that's Swagger. But we're not done yet. Let's leave program.cs open, and we're going to right-click and say Add New Project, Web API. This time we're going to call this Redoc. So this is Redoc. And let's call it Redoc. Let's not step on toes for namespaces. Demo. I probably should call it Swagger UI demo. Oh well. You get the point. Leave all the rest the same. And now in here, again, let's grab from everything below the use HTTPS redirection. Let's grab all that code, copy it, come up here to Redoc demo, open up program.cs. Everything below the HTTPS redirect, get rid of it, paste in your code. Again, to start us off at the same spot before. Now what we're going to do is right-click on dependencies, say Manage NuGet Package, go to Browse, and you're going to search for Redoc. When you do, you're going to get swashbuckle.asp.core.redoc. This is version 7.2.0. All right, so it's very similar. Okay, let's hit install, apply, close that out. Now in your app.map open API, after that, you're going to say app.useRedoc. Again, options, your arrow key, curly braces. Inside here, you're going to say options.spec_URL. And what URL do you think that is? Well, it's open API /v1.json, like so. That's all you need to say. And put your semicolon at the end of line 16 as well. So now we'll go into our properties and go to launch settings.json, set the launch browser to true, and also say the launch URL. This one is going to be API-docs. Now with that, change your startup project to be Redoc. Hit run. When you do, it's going to launch and you get this. It's a different look. This is much more of a documentation look. I've seen this in documentation quite a bit. By the way, again, this is very plain. If you go to Redoc's site, they have a demo for, I believe, a library that's much more full. Like they have, information up top about how to get started, and they have their own logo, and they have links and all the rest. But this tells you what's in the documentation. So you can say, oh, there's our 4 endpoints. If I expand that out, I can see that, okay, over here on the right, this is the get. There's your URLs that you can call to get this. And then here's response samples. Only gives you 200 because that's all that's been documented. but that tells you what the information is you'll probably get back. You get an array of these objects. The post looks like this. The delete, you only pass in a parameter, which it shows you right here. The ID is required. It's an int32. Over here, it shows you that the ID is required for the get one, and then here's what you'll expect to get back, which is one object, not an array of objects. So it documents for you what the API will look like. All right, so that's Redoc. And again, you get to change that and format this just like you would Swagger UI. It's just a different way of looking at things. The one thing you'll notice it's missing that I like to have is the ability to actually execute the API in browser. That's not part of this documentation. However, that's kind of a good thing, because if every documentation site also allowed for execution of APIs, maybe you don't want that. Maybe that's not what you would prefer your API be used like. Like you want them to actually have to go somewhere else to call your API. You just want to document it. Well, this is a great option for just documenting your API. So again, now we have Swagger UI, the one we're used to, and then Redoc as our second option. Okay, but we are not done. Let's set up for our third project to see how that looks. So we're going to say add new project. At least our third demo. We have 4 projects now. API. We're going to call this nswag. Let's call it nswag. And we'll say demo and leave everything standard. Again, we will go back to our program.cs. We'll copy these lines of code. This we have, again, the standard that they all work off of. So close all tabs and go to program.cs, go from line 17 on down, get rid of it, paste in your same code, and then we're going to right click on dependencies, manage NuGet package, go to browse and type nswag. Okay, and we have a bunch of different nswag stuff. We're going to choose the nswag.aspnet core option and install and apply and accept. Now, this is one that I do want to give a brief, PSA here. This is just scratching the surface of what nswag can do, what we're going to do here. There's so much more it can do. In fact, it can do things like generating code for your C# client so that it knows how to call your API and you can do it in the browser. There's a lot more stuff you can do under the surface. So just be careful because it does look very similar to a previous version. But app.use Swagger UI, and we'll say options and curly braces and options dot document path equals, and we're going to say slash open API slash v1.json. Looks really similar, right? And let's go over to our properties launch settings, change this to true, and we're going to say the launch URL is going to be Swagger. And now we change from Redoc over to nswag. We run this. And we get this, which looks very, very familiar, doesn't it? It looks like Swagger. In fact, it says up here, Swagger. But this is actually nswag. This is the nswag. It looks and acts like Swagger, which is why I'm saying be careful not to judge it based off of just what I'm showing you. I'm just showing you how to get started in all 4. There's so much more depth to nswag as far as being able to do more with this page. But wait, there's more. So let's show you one more thing that you can do. Let's comment this line out. And we're going to say app.use Redoc options arrow and delete that end parentheses. So let's run this again, because all we did is change to say use Redoc. And when we do, That's the NSWAG demo, but it looks an awful lot like Redoc. Okay, you can generate both. You can have both of these. So you can have your just documentation for your API. I mean, that's a public-facing one. And you can have your, hey, try it out, test out different things in the browser one, that's your Swagger one, for just internal, for, just development version. Lots of other stuff you can do, or you can, show both the clients if you want. But you can do both with just changing one line of code. So that's number 4. Now there's another option. So I'm sorry, that's number 3. I'm losing track here. 4th project, 3rd different demo. Let's go on to the 4th demo. So the last demo I have for you, right click on solution, add new project. You should be used to this by now. API project. This one we're going to call Scalar demo. And again, leave everything the same. Close out of that window. Again, come back down here, copy all this code, and then go to the Scalar demo, go program.cs. Everything from line 17 on down gets destroyed. Paste in our sample. And now let's also set the startup project to be Scalar so you don't forget. Okay, so let's save this. And we need to right-click on dependencies, manage NuGet packages, go to browse, and here we're going to search for Scalar. And select scalar.ASP.NET Core. This is version 2.0.18 as of the recording of this video. Hit install, hit apply, close it down. And then in our app.map OpenAPI, we can say app.map Scalar API reference. My IntelliSense is not working right now. Control dot to add the using directive for that so we can see it. So map Scalar API reference. That's it. So now we can come up to our properties, launch settings, change the browser to say true, and then say launch URL. And for this, we're going to say Scalar /v1. I do want to point out one thing real quick. Before I forget, I already forgot. I was going to tell you back over here in the launch settings for, this one was for the NSWAG project. We changed to Redoc, but we didn't change the launch URL. Still the same launch URL. Just so we're clear. By default, you can change that, but by default, it's still the Swagger URL. Okay, anywho, this is the Scalar one. We say Scalar /v1. Again, you could put this manually in the browser. You don't have to put it in here, but it just makes launching a little faster for us because it launches right away. And this is Scalar. So a couple things here. This is kind of my favorite. The UI still needs work. They're still working on it, but I think it's my favorite of all of them because it just gives me what I need. And for me, it's less about how it looks, although I would love to have it look even better, but it's more about, is it functional? And does it give me the functionality I'm looking for? So for example, on the left-hand side, we see all of our different versions, git, post, delete, and git. And we can go right to one of them. We can see it takes an integer, it's required. We can go to test request here. That pops up as a little window here that says, hey, here's your ID is required. Put a value in there, like, 1. And then if there's any cookies, headers, any query parameters, go ahead and fill those in. But we just put in the variable we need. We hit send and comes back SUStorm, sue@stormy.org. So that gives you everything I need, including the headers that came back and any cookies that were sent back. So it says 214 milliseconds. It has all the information I need. And, this is kind of like having Postman in the browser where you can just test it out. And it shows you right at the top where the URL is, what the extension is for it. You can go to history. There's just some really cool stuff here that you can see. You can even download the body if you want. That's pretty cool. But the other thing is, I never remember curl commands. I just, for whatever reason, it's a mental block. They're not hard. Okay, now this is super easy. You say curl in the URL, but it shows me what the URL is. I can just copy this, and now I have the curl command. I can run that curl command from the terminal. And I could do the curl for the delete, or I can do the curl for, this is more what I'd forget, how to do the curl for, say, a post command. Let's copy that, paste it in Notepad, modify a couple things, or just, you can't change it here. But those things, that's how you just create a curl request and go from there, right? So simple, easy. But this is just curl. Why is it showing us curl? Well, because it's the standard, easy way to call an API from basically any terminal. But notice up here, client libraries. Do you want a shell? There's the curl, Ruby, Node, PHP, Python, more. So let's just choose PHP for a minute. And, what changed? Well, down here, that's the command to get that URL into PHP. Okay, that's PHP Guzzle. But notice the drop down here, which actually can come back up here and look at the more. This drop down is pretty extensive. In fact, there's HTTP client and REST sharp for C#. So HTTP client looks like this for that command. And if we choose, notice we can change it per item. I can say, what's the REST sharp for that? Oh, easier. But there's your C# client side, the client call for this API. So you just copy that, paste it into your C# and you're good to go. So I like having that option as well. We have the models here and it shows what the model is. Right down here at the bottom, there's your model. Also notice, if you don't like dark mode, I get it. Some people don't. Some people, it's bad for their eyes or they can't really see it well. No problem. Down here, lower left-hand corner, there's a toggle. There's your screaming white light mode. Cool. That's awesome. I love it. Again, the text box for the code isn't light mode. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if I have to put a setting in there or if it's just not fixed yet. But this is very much a work in progress, but I think it's a great work in progress. So personally, of all of these options, I like Scalar the best right now. But the cool thing is that I don't have to, get too uptight about which one I use, because the code for Scalar, which personally I prefer the simplicity right here, but the code for Scalar is right there. But the code for NSWAG right there, or if you want to use the Swagger UI for it, just change that out. Swagger UI is pretty similar, and so is Redoc. So your options here are open, and that's one of the things I love about this is we used to have Swagger UI built in, which meant by default the world used Swagger UI, at least the C# web API world. But now with us not having a UI built in, we have more of an option, because before it was kind of like, well, that's the built-in one, so we'll use that one. Now it's we have the Open API standard, which is the JSON file, and we can consume that from any UI that makes sense for us. So I like this. I like having these 4 options. Options are great because you get to choose which one is best for you. You don't have to rely on, this one is the only one we can do, so therefore we, do it or don't. We have this option to say, you know what? No, I want to have something a little different. So you choose something a little different. So for me personally, I will probably spend more time in Scalar. That's just what I like. If I was creating a purely for the client documentation site, I'd probably end up with Redoc. All right. So again, already for me, I'm seeing how I'd use different solutions for different problems. So I would encourage you to check them all out. Again, just to be clear, I just barely scratched the surface on any of these. Okay. There's so much more you can do. We could spend 2-3 hours probably configuring and tweaking and showing off all the different bells and whistles that each of these options has. And there's a lot of really cool stuff behind the scenes that I didn't show you. Like I said, NSWAG does much more than just look like Redoc or look like Swagger. So I would encourage you, try them out, see what you're comfortable with, see what you want to start with, and then go deeper into it. If you have a suggestion for which one you want to see a deep dive into, go to suggestions.iamtimcorey.com and leave it there. Make sure you check to see if there's already a suggestion out there that matches yours, that you can upvote it, because I do go somewhat based off of popularity there. Although you have a great idea, you might get picked up even if no one votes in your suggestion. So definitely let me know. Let me know down in the comments as well what your thoughts are on these, which one that you think you're going to gravitate most towards, and which one, is, kind of most intriguing to you. And so with that, thanks for watching. Check out the source code in the description if you want that source code for this project. Otherwise, have a great day. Thanks for watching. As always, I am Tim Corey.